go out at the Bayou Jamb. Marquee matchup, rivals. Rustin and Neville slugging it out. It was maybe a glorified scrimmage for most, but not for these two. Early on, new LSU commit Aiden Andy. He's going to make a statement early. Read sophomore Parker Robinson perfectly. That is a pick six. What a start for him. Aiden was far from being finished. But Neville is going to respond. Jason Parker with a scoop and score from 81 yards out against Jared Ball's team, ties it up at 7. Rustin puts together a nice drive. Josh Brantley calls his own number, pushes in for the score. They're up by a touchdown at the half. Second half, Tigers starting to roar. 4th and 5, Robinson to Jaden Nichols from 25 yards out. Just over 3 minutes to go in the jam. Neville's going to go for 2. Robinson rolls out, finds Nichols. Tigers up 15-14. So at this point, Aiden has a pick 6 plus another interception. So what do? You kick it to him. Ruh-roh. That is trouble for Neville. Aiden lost his grandfather this week, dedicated the game to him, and look at him go. How about an 81-yard kickoff return to win the game? One of the best individual performances I've seen in the 16 years that they've held this event. Rustin wins a thriller, 20-15. Back in the day, it didn't get much bigger or better than Evangel versus West Monroe. Eagles have had a few down years, but they have reloaded. Sophomore quarterback Pop Houston, considered one of the best quarterbacks in the country. First drive, Rebels getting after him. Smokes Lilly with the sack. The kid's going to have a big year. Houston, though, living up to the hype. Finds Nate Green, 42-yard pitch and catch. Evangel on the board. The Rebels will answer, though. 1st and goal. Christian Ponty plunges in for the score. Ball comes loose after he crossed the goal line. Evangel strikes back before the break. Houston scrambling around in the pocket. Again, finds Green across the middle. And he's going to slice up that secondary. Evades a few tackles, takes it in for the score. Evangel's going to be fun to watch. Of course, they play Neville next week. Eagles sideline fired up. Near the end, West Monroe tries to come back. Solid drive. Booby Miles pounds his way in for the end zone, but it was not enough. West Monroe falls 25-22. Chip Bilderback era is underway out at St. Frederick. Garbone Woods, also the new head coach, and David DeMoss. Warriors put together a nice drive first half. Owen O'Neill plunges in for the score, take a 6-0 lead. Stays that way till late in the game. 4th down for the T-Wolves. Dalton Albrighton is not scared, finds a wide open Doran Sadler. Garbone Woods ends up winning a thriller, 7-6. Jonesboro Hodge back in the Bayou Jamb. Newcomer Red River looking to make some noise. Early on, Red River establishing the rushing attack. Jaden Stewart running hard, going to lower his shoulder. That's going to move the chains. Red River features a versatile quarterback. Malik Smith gets outside. He's going to find some running room. This will pick up a first down. It's going to lead to a touchdown. Red River goes on to win this thing 20-12. Also at the Bayou Jamb, Gina taking on Manning. Cedric Wilson, jump cut right here inside, and he's going to walk into the end zone. Massive hole created by that Gene offensive line. He had 2 touchdowns on the day. Later in the game, it was his running back partner in crime, Daniel Hatcher, finds a gap, and he takes this one to the house. 40-yard touchdown run. He also had 2 scores. Gina looked awesome today. They rolled to a 30-0 victory.